Welcome to A Healthy Bite. You're one nibble closer to a more satisfying way of life, a healthier you, and bite-sized bits of healthy motivation. Now let's dig in on the dish with Rebecca Huff.
Hey, it's Rebecca. Today I am here with author Fred Valachi, and we are talking about his book, which is in its second edition, and that book is The Restaurant Diet. And the topic of today's podcast, we are going to be talking about childhood obesity. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll just start from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Well, everything's got to start at the beginning. And of course, my issues with weight started in childhood. I grew up in a family of Italian-American gourmet cooks in New York. And there was more food than we knew what to do with. I mean, Tuesday night was like a holiday. Holidays were just like off the wall. The food was delicious. Everybody, my mom, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody, they were great cooks. My great-grandparents' house had 3 kitchens, one on each floor, and they really needed them. They used them. It was a great way to grow up, but I didn't think there was anything unusual or different or wrong. It was kind of like my big fat Greek wedding when I first went to school and saw the other kids eating peanut butter and jelly, and it's like I was going with like Tupperware things with meatballs and roasted peppers and you name it, leftover lasagna. So my life was definitely different. But my issues with food really began when my parents got divorced when I was 5. I watched my dad overeat by standing in front of the refrigerator often in the middle of the night, just eating whatever was there. I mean, with his bare hands. I mean, he knew better, but it was a compulsive form, addictive behavior. I mean, emotional overeating. I mean, wasn't hungry. I mean, he was hungry for other things. And I ended up following in his footsteps. I mean, between genetically and just environmentally being exposed to this. I was an only child, and when my parents got divorced, I was lost. I didn't know where to turn. I was the only kid with divorced parents in a small private school on Long Island, and really couldn't identify or relate to anybody. I felt ashamed and I felt different. So the only thing that remained the same after the divorce was everybody still liked to cook and everybody still liked to eat. So I basically embraced this, mimicked what I saw, and continued to eat, but ended up eating way more than I needed to. So by the 5th grade, so middle school, I'd become the fattest kid in school, like well over 200 pounds. So for like an 11-year-old, that's pretty big. I stood out like a sore thumb and became picked on. I was bullied, physically abused in school by older boys. Our school went from like kindergarten through 12th grade. So like some of like the upperclassmen, I mean, we'd be like sharing some of the same hallways and like gym lockers and whatever else. And I mean, they would actually come and like squeeze my breasts and like, torture me, and laugh at, my name became Fat Fred. So I hated school. I hated my life, hated myself. And my parents and families were too busy fighting to really do anything about it. And I mean, these are scars that remain to this day, that the kind of treatment and abuse and stuff that went on in school. And I deal with a lot of families and children that are dealing with weight and food issues in my own coaching business and speaking business today. And really, I tell people that overeating in children, if they're 20 pounds overweight or if there's some sort of issue going on, it's a sign or a symptom of some possibly serious problems. And I mean, we've seen it all. I mean, anything from physical abuse like I experienced, sexual abuse, I mean, really bad stuff. And it really needs to be dealt with early on. Otherwise, it becomes an even more serious problem. I mean, I was maybe 50, 60 pounds overweight as a middle schooler and dealing with some pretty awful stuff. But this ended up ballooning, yo-yo dieting my way through life, through middle school, high school. I mean, I ended up losing a lot of weight when it was time to we moved to Florida when I was 13 to start high school. I lost like 50 pounds in 3 months. I went on like a starvation diet. I went to the library. I mean, they didn't have internet back then or any way to look up anything else or anywhere else to turn. I didn't tell anybody. I mean, I didn't even know that anybody would even care. I mean, I was just the fat kid. My family basically written off, okay, he's going to be fat like his father, or, food issues like that uncle or that one or whomever. And, it's just inevitable. And they were busy with their own stuff. So I took it upon myself, like, okay, a geographical change was what I needed. It was like a perfect opportunity to remake myself and leave fat Fred behind in New York. So lost all this weight in 3 months, starved myself, hated it. And this was like my first diet, and exercised by steaming up the bathroom and running in place like at night until I like nearly collapsed. I mean, literally sweated the pounds off. I mean, I nearly passed out in school. My grades suffered, and it was really, these were all cries for help. And kids I deal with and families today, I mean, this certainly had or has the potential to go the opposite extreme: anorexia, bulimia. And kids especially, are so prone to peer pressure and body shaming and body image, and like, you got to look like you're a model in a magazine cover and People or whatever. I mean, and that's not realistic. I mean, everything teaches us to be competitive and to compete, look outside ourselves, and not love ourselves. I mean, love myself. I hated myself. I hated my body, hated my looks, hated everything that there was, hated that I knew I was eating too much and I couldn't stop unless I like went on some crazy, ridiculous regimen, lost the weight, and still felt empty and lost as I was before, even though I moved to Florida, to a sunny new place where everybody was friendly. Nobody knew anything about this fat kid back in New York or what I went through. And I didn't know how to be a teenager or how to live life. Unfortunately, I didn't become anorexic or bulimic. And I mean, other kids become suicidal or alcohol or drugs, or, I mean, just really horrible stuff happens. And I mean, it really goes back to like a lack of self-love, a lack of guidance, a lack of acceptance. And I mean, it's a family thing. I mean, a family that eats together and stays together ends up raising better kids. I mean, I'm not a dad yet, but I certainly know from my own experience and people I talk to and coach, and how I would correct this, how I would do this differently, is to make time to eat with your children and see what's going on. And if there is an issue like a minor weight problem, that, it's time to start asking questions, maybe get counseling, nutritional as well as emotional, if there may be something major going on, that this is just a child crying for help. This is not a bad kid. This is not an unlovable or unlikable kid. This is a kid who is using food, perhaps, as opposed to alcohol, drugs, or other things, because food is readily available and, pretty socially acceptable. I mean, a kid doesn't have to show an ID to go down and buy a slice of pizza or Coca-Cola like they do cigarettes or Juul products or alcohol, or it's not illegal like drugs. I mean, so food is a very readily accessible substance that kids use. And it's often, when we talk about gateway drugs, food is often a gateway drug for people, kids with emotional issues and stories of backgrounds of abuse and other bad things going on, that this is how it manifests. This is how it first shows up. And it's easy to miss because, okay, half of our population is overweight. I mean, the numbers are staggering. I mean, that's why it's such an important conversation. I'm glad we're having it.
And you say you were an only child, but say, for example, and I know you do coaching, so I'm sure you've had this experience where maybe there's one kid out of a group of siblings and only one of them is overweight. And the parents, maybe they're getting help from you. What do you say to parents who have a child and they can't understand why they're overweight?
I've seen a number of cases where there could be two siblings, for instance, and one could be obese and the other one could be literally like a toothpick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really going the opposite way on the eating disorder spectrum. And there are a lot of reasons, and they really go back to, I mean, I've seen everything. I mean, without naming names or giving away any confidences, I mean, people that parents are involved in things like affairs or scandals or, broken homes or, stuff like that. And the kids are just acting it out. There could be abuse. I mean, a father or an uncle or a grandparent or neighbor or somebody could be abusing one of the kids and not the other one. So it's like the skinny one could be the one being abused, and the fat one is making themselves fat because it's like, okay, well, they won't touch me if I'm like, 100 pounds overweight. Just
Mm-hmm.
a for instance. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I see.
It could
And
be anything, really, couldn't it?
yeah,
And so any kind of insecurity could possibly, I mean, because sometimes I feel like I've seen cases where there's a seemingly, air quotes, perfect family,
right.
no divorce, mom and dad are happily married, as far as everyone can see, and the child is maybe overweight and their siblings are not. I mean, there could be any number of mental health problems or anything contributing to it. Then again, there can also be actual physical health problems that can contribute as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I've dealt with people that have hormonal imbalances and things like that, things that they really couldn't control, but that could be controlled or addressed medically. And really, if a child is experiencing things like being overweight, whether it's a few pounds or more than that, I mean, annual physicals and encouraging your child to be open and honest and not sweep things under the rug is very important. I mean, having talks with your children about things like food and relationships, the birds and the bees, and medical, and how they're feeling and how their day was, and knowing who their friends are and being involved in the school and the extracurriculars and all the activities, meeting the other parents. It's it, it's just an entire web, and it's so many aspects involved to being a parent in this day and age, where I mean, we all have these little devices that, I mean, you have access to the entire world and the entire world has access to you, should you give your kid access to that. And I mean, it's just, things move at lightning speed, and I mean, potentially anybody, any information or misinformation, things that you may not want your kid exposed to, has access to your kids. So
Right.
more involved we as adults, as parents, I mean, me being someone who's gone through and lived through, back in the 1980s and 90s as a kid growing up, I mean, it was a different time, but we could take a lot of what I learned from my upbringing and the people I'm working with now and helping. That, I mean, the bottom line is to be involved.
Exactly. And as a side note, this is one reason why I am an advocate for using monitoring software on your computer, because if your child starts like searching for keywords like how to lose weight, or how many calories can I survive on, or these kind of things, that's kind of a red flag that
Yeah,
parents can see what's going on, with the kids. So I think that's another kind of a safety net to put in place, is to know what your kids are looking for online.
absolutely. And giving them an example, I mean, cooking together, shopping together, eating out together, showing them good behavior,
Mm-hmm.
a balance of good foods. I mean, there should be salads and vegetables, as well as a mixture of lean proteins, and occasionally, I mean, like things like pasta or whatever. And I mean, on the table. I mean, there should be a reason. Children should be raised, and it should be explained to them why they're doing it, and get them involved, get them in the kitchen, let them get their hands dirty, let them make things, make muffins, clean the vegetables, make a salad, go to the farmer's market on a Saturday, and really explore. I mean, it's such an important part of life. I mean, what we eat, I mean, we are what we eat. It's just everything. I mean, we raise kids today. I mean, the internet raises kids, and parents are off doing what they're doing. I mean, maybe working because they have to pay bills or whatever, but we really have to take a step back and become more involved and more hands-on in general. I mean, in children's lives and in our own lives. And I like seeing how, I mean, people, myself included, people I work with, are going back to a more old world mentality as far as how they eat, how they shop for food, buying local, buying fresh, and really making choices on a daily level, as opposed to buying, I mean, mass quantities of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and looking for economies, but actually going out and forging relationships with local merchants and farmers and artisans and dairies, etc., and finding the best. That there's so much good stuff out there, and there's really just a huge movement towards it now, and it's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful to see it. I mean, I kind of grew up
Yeah.
I grew up in, you know born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s, it was kind of like the end of it. And now it's, thank God, it's come full swing. It's coming back.
All right. Yeah,
Which
that's speaking my language, farmers markets and sourcing local foods. I love all of that kind of stuff. And I do think that as parents, a lot of time we get in a rush. And I do have 6 kids, so I can speak from
right,
experience. You know, we get in a hurry and we want to do something fast. And especially, I think, where in a family where both parents are working, it is a harder job to get, you know, whole foods on the table, but it can be done. And I think it's something that we do need to make a priority. And you know, people need to slow down and just take their time with food and make that a bonding family activity, because I mean, it's so much fun to spend time in the kitchen with your family, and I'm sure you have some good memories of
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Lots. I mean, there were so many good memories, and to this day, some of my favorite memories and times are in the kitchen. I mean, entertaining. We had wonderful times in the kitchen, wonderful times cooking, eating. And I've worked with a top chef in New York who actually endorsed my second book, Gabriel Kreither. He's a Michelin star chef, comes from France. And he lost 60 pounds in 2 years, doing a lot of what I advocate, which really he saw was living a lot closer to the land and to the seasons and in harmony and really getting in touch with what your body needs. And he said, this is really the way we lived back in Europe. That
Mm-hmm.
he came to the US maybe 25 or so years ago and became, he was a top chef and started working in New York City, and just said it just amazed him how the American culture was so different, and it just so fast paced. And the two biggest things that he noticed that were different, then he really had to become conscious and just reteach himself in order to get healthier, were one, Americans in general eat much quicker. I mean, like in Europe and France and Italy, etc. I mean, a 2 or 3 hour lunch is not unheard of. And maybe they do something light for dinner. They go take a walk after lunch, then they take a nap, they go back to work, and they have something light at night. They eat their bigger meal during the
Mm-hmm.
day, and they don't just sit down and it's just like, there's like a stopwatch, like the Nathan's hot dog eating contest in Coney Island. Hurry up and see if you can shove down 70 or 80 hot dogs or whatever it is. Clean your plate because someone's going to take it away from you. I mean, he's just like, we just savor it, we enjoy it. And he said the second thing that really goes hand in hand with being able to sit, for a couple hours and just savor a meal is the portions are so much bigger in the United States. I mean, you get this huge bowl of whatever, and then it's just like someone's got a stopwatch, like hurry up and eat it. He said in France, everybody's relaxed. The portions are, I mean, people make fun of French food and Nouvelle cuisine for being, notoriously small and expensive and whatever else, but I've been there many times and found that the portions were actually appropriate. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're not walking home with 3 doggy bags of whatever. I mean,
Right.
it's just like you enjoyed the meal. I mean, it was quality food, fresh, seasonal, local, whatever. I mean, everything came with a story, and it was enjoyable. And then you got up and you left. You didn't have like lunch and dinner for the next 5 days. And I mean, many people with a history of eating problems, it's like I was one of them. It's like I'd order too much, I'd eat too much, and then I'd go home with too much, and half the stuff wouldn't even last the night. I mean, in the refrigerator, I'd eat it. It's there. Not a
Right.
good thing.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I agree with that. I definitely notice a big difference when you're in Europe. The portion sizes are smaller and less food waste. Really, if you think about it, if you get an adequate size portion of food, then you're not going to have anything left over to throw away. So, in a way, that also solves the problem of food waste. But switching kind of tracks now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, can you tell me about the 4 phases in your book, The Restaurant Diet?
Well, the 4 phases are really my way to take back my life. First phase is really called the beginning. We all start at the beginning. It was necessary to have a complete medical workup. I mean, go to my doctor, make sure there was nothing else wrong. I mean, that I passed a stress test if I was going to start exercising. I mean, I'd become, 330 pounds and a couch potato, and just didn't want to be found on the side of the road, and make sure that everything like hormones, cholesterol, all that stuff, and everything checked out okay. Like, okay, I was cleared to do some, moderate exercise that I could possibly do. I mean, like walking or swimming. And as far as the food choices, phase one was really, it was time to get serious, to get accountable, send a message to my body, shock the system, so to speak, that things were different, that I wasn't going to be eating whatever I wanted, that I was going to start to read menus, plan in advance, count calories, and figure out what my body needed. That, if I could eat 1,500 or 2,000 calories a day, it's like I could eat it in brownies, or I could eat it in a nice mixture of, fruits, vegetables, protein, a couple of carbs, whatever. And my diet really allowed me to make choices that were beneficial to me. I did work with a cardiologist, my doctor, a nutritionist, and a therapist, really get all the people involved, and eventually a personal trainer, just to oversee and make sure that what I was doing was reasonable and would be beneficial. And sure enough, the weight started to come off. I didn't deprive myself. I like to drink wine, so I allowed myself a glass of wine with dinner 6 days a week. The seventh day, I typically did it on a Sunday because I was off. I made it a cleanse day, especially for phase one, and occasionally do a cleanse day now. I mean, just to kind of reset everything. I think it's really helpful, and I really feel better afterwards, where it was really a lot of water, mineral water, tea, such as green tea, organic, smoothies, fruits, vegetables, really nothing solid for 1 day a week. And I really think that helps reset everything. I mean, we're talking after years of yo-yo dieting and eating without accountability. I mean, we're probably 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. I mean, I didn't really eat junk food. That was not my thing. I'm not really a sugar addict, but it was just time to get serious and do it my way. So that was phase one. And I did phase one for 2 months. It was only 2 months, and I was able to lose 10% of my body weight. So at the time it was 30 something pounds, and I did it through the holidays, which I know now we're approaching the holidays, and people ask me all the time, it's like, I really want to lose weight. I need to lose weight, but the holidays are coming. It's like Thanksgiving is this week. And and then, well, what about Christmas and New Year's and all this other stuff? And can I just, start it with a New Year's resolution? And I'm like, I started when I lost 150 pounds 10 years ago. I began it on November 1st. I mean, it just so happened I came to the awareness and the decision to do it. It was like back in September of that year, and decided to get all my ducks in a row and, make peace with the idea and line up, the medical tests and get advice on a good therapist and a good nutritionist to work with. And then it's just like, okay, November 1st, go. It's time. Why wait till January and have to lose another 10 pounds like many people do?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing it as like a short-term means to an end, like I'm going to go on a diet in January. I overdid it during the holidays. So now it's like going to be like dry January or New Year's resolutions. Most of them go bust by Super Bowl, and, lose 20 pounds to look better for swimsuit season by Memorial Day or whatever. I'm like, no, this has got to be something that's going to last forever, that I'm going to do. So I like to drink wine. So it's like, okay, you're not going to eliminate the wine. And I have people like, oh, I can't stand wine, but I like beer. It's like, okay, well, if you want a beer, have a beer instead. I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to. I mean, you shouldn't be deprived. I mean, don't drink a six-pack. You're trying to be healthy. I mean, that's not healthy. But it's just like, go out and you can have steak, lobster, shrimp, fish, poultry. I mean, you go through the whole thing. I mean, it works for whether you're vegetarian, vegan, or not. Equal opportunity for anybody. And it's all about choices, whatever works right for your body. So, I mean, eliminating things like processed foods, artificial flavors, sugar wherever possible. I mean, it's not that you can't ever have dessert again, but it's just, if you're going to have sugar, I prefer natural sugar like fruits and honey and things like agave to refined sugar, but I'd rather have even sugar than artificial substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really looking at the quality over the quantity of everything. And then phase two, I was able to exercise more. I mean, I was able to walk considerably more, and was able to reintroduce things like occasional pizza, pasta, dessert, some treats back into the diet, raise the calorie allowance. Did that for a couple of more months, lost another 30 or so pounds. And then by that point, I was feeling much, much better. I'd lost like 60 pounds. I was feeling good. I was on a roll, really had no setbacks, no issues. I was going to the gym at this point. I was swimming. I was riding a bike, things that I hadn't done in years. I mean, I was too self-conscious to get in a bathing suit. I wouldn't want to be caught dead on a bicycle. I mean, walking just to get the mail was difficult. So now I was even jogging a little bit and back to playing a little bit of golf. And I'm just like, this is kind of like what the rest of my life could look like. And this is kind of fun. And I'm feeling good. And I could introduce a few other things back into my diet and basically raise the calorie budget a little bit more as long as I keep consistent with the exercise. And did that for another 7 months, lost like 90 pounds more, and just kept it going. Phase 4 is basically just like the continuation, and it's truly anything in moderation. If moderation means like one serving, put your fork and knife utensils down in between bites, chew your food, sip water in between, not obsess about it. I mean, if you can have it in your house and not obsess about it, it's fine. If it's something that you have a problem with, then I don't recommend having it. That's really the 4 phases. And I mean, if you get to a point when you're in phase 4, which is really the maintenance phase, it's like you've achieved your goal. I mean, you've gotten to a reasonable body weight or body weight range. It's like, I look at it now as more than a number on a scale, but just like a healthy range that you want to be in. It's really how you feel, how your clothes fit. It's like, you'll know. I mean, your ability to climb a flight of stairs or go out and swing a golf club or work in the yard. I mean, if you're feeling good about yourself and you're at the right place, you'll know it. I mean, so it's just like, you don't have to weigh yourself every day and obsess. It's just, if you're getting to the top end of your range, then maybe it's time to dial it back to an earlier phase for a while. Just get it in check, going for a tune-up. And that's really what it is. It's just getting in touch with our bodies, learning to listen to ourselves, learning to love ourselves, and look for reasons why we overate. External cues, maybe emotional. Maybe we had an argument or a bad day at work, or we're sad. I mean, I struggled in the last 10 years, things like death of a loved one, breakups, things didn't go my way in business. I mean, frustrations. And of course, I mean, we're wired a certain way, and we've used food for many, many years. So the default is to go back to food, and when we're having a hard time. And many people that are afraid to go back to food may go to other things, turn to other substances, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, you name it. I mean, any kind of compulsive addictive behavior to take themselves out of where they are, because where they are is too difficult to tolerate. People can't tolerate feeling the feelings of unhappiness or stress or anxiety or anger or depression. It's just like, these are all feelings and they're there for a reason. We have to work through them, and it's just not stuff ourselves through them or medicate ourselves through them. So that's really, the 4 phases are really a realistic long-term recipe for successful, happy, healthier living. So the first book, The Restaurant Diet, How to Eat Out Every Night and Still Lose Weight, is the 4 phases, a bit of my story and background, and is a cookbook with recipes from 100 top restaurants nationwide, all with nutrition facts. Everything's been analyzed, comments and suggestions from the chefs themselves. 25 of my favorite recipes, a lot of them from my Italian-American background, but things that have been lightened up that I have perfected in my own kitchen, making things that without sacrificing flavor or quality, that are a lot lighter and less calories and should be enjoyed. And the second edition just came out. It's called The Restaurant Diet, A Spiritual Journey of Self-Discovery, is really the story behind the story, how we can dive deep and we look within ourselves. We all have that eternal internal spark that drives us. And if we tap that, we can do whatever. We can lose 150 pounds. We could start a business. We could take a trip. We could build an empire. We could change our lives, and we could positively impact the world if we just start looking within and liking and loving ourselves enough to really want to do so, enough to believe that we deserve better than what society or our parents or our peers or our siblings or our neighbors or our coworkers or whatever anybody else tells us we are or who we should be, whatever box they put us in, we can climb out of that. We all have the power. And that's the message.
Okay, so it's been about 10 years since you lost the
10
weight.
years, 10 years almost, 10 years November 1st. So
And so it's been
2020.
sustainable.
It's something that actually works. And this is the difference between what I'm doing. I really don't call it a diet I went on.
Mm-hmm.
Diets to me are like what I did when I was 13 and tried between that point and up to the point that I was 30 years old. I read practically every book there was, tried every program, shake, meal plan, pills, this, that, whatever, considered things like gastric bypass and lap band. I know people, I have clients that have actually done that and it worked for them. It wasn't the way I wanted to do it. Like I decided trying all the things that didn't work, like I had to learn to make peace with food. Food wasn't something that I could just give up. It's unlike any other addiction. It's the hardest addiction to deal with because unlike alcohol, drugs, tobacco, whatever else it is, you don't need those things. Your body may be actually physically crave them at some point or become dependent on them, and you may in your mind think you need them, but there's not many things that you actually really need to live. Food, air, and water are three of those things. I mean, we could maybe add in fourth thing, we need to be able to relate with people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than that, I mean, what do we really need to sustain life on this planet in our
That's
body?
a good point. And you, I know you said at one point in your book, you said I had to stop making excuses and enabling myself to do things that weren't good for me. And diets don't teach and encourage love. And I
No,
thought that was a really good point.
absolutely, absolutely true. Most diets are what I would call a short-term means to an end. Like
Mm.
anybody could lose weight. And I looked at diets, trying whatever it was. It's like, okay, I'm going to try this. I need to or want to lose 25 pounds, say, and I want to do it in X amount of time. So I'm going to follow whatever plan it is. Like I'd never do this forever. It's like, this is just like, a short-term means to an end. Like they say anybody could tolerate anything for 24 hours or, maybe 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever. But it's just like, you're already setting yourself up for failure or relapse. It's like anybody could do whatever. I mean, crackers and water for a month. I mean, you could do that. I mean, I went to 2 top residential weight loss treatment centers, kind of like the dieters equivalent of detox. I mean, these places are thousands of dollars a week. And I know many people who have gone many, many, many times. So it's like, okay, so they lose weight there. But then what happens? Why do they go back? Why are they back and forth, back and forth? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
every, a couple of times a year or annually or every couple of years. It's like they gain the weight back because what they taught them there isn't realistic. I went to this place in Miami and they're telling us, I mean, they give us a menu and it's like a 4-ounce piece of grilled chicken and, salad and some veggies. The only seasonings allowed are sodium-free Mrs. Dash and Tabasco sauce. There's no oil, there's no vinegar, there's no salt, there's no pepper, there's no lemon. It's like, who the heck is going to eat like this? I mean, nobody. I mean, whether you're a gourmand like I am, or you just eat like in normal restaurants or just a regular cook, whatever you're used to eating. I don't know anybody who's going to eat like that. So I sit down in this beautiful, I mean, it's a nice restaurant setting. They have tablecloths and china and silverware and candles and everything else. And, so I order from this horrible looking menu. And so this is the first night there. I'm there for a week. Just, I felt like an undisciplined failure from, every other diet that had gone bust. So I figured I had to go to some residential place and try. So, all right. So I'm going to do it. So I asked for a wine list. Everybody in the room starts laughing. It's like, what's the joke? So somebody comes over, there's no wine allowed in our program. So obviously all the other people had either read all the materials, and many of them I learned this is like their 5th or their 18th time there. So it's like they all know very well you can't drink wine. But then guess what? You do this for a week or two and you go home, you start drinking wine again, and boom. You eat whatever. You don't eat like 4-ounce piece of grilled chicken, and you don't use sodium-free Mrs. Dash and Tabasco. I mean, you start with your olive oil and your balsamic and your lemon. Not those things are bad. And then what really started the restaurant diet was I went to a top facility like a year or two later in North Carolina. And I decided I was going to take a month off from my life. I was still at like 330 pounds. I'd been diagnosed with sleep apnea. I was pre-diabetic. Like I was like 28 years old. My doctor said, you're going to die. Like if you don't get it, if you don't do something, you're going to die. I know every diet you've tried hasn't worked. And I'm like, there has to be something. There's got to be something there. So it's like, so I go looking for like this miracle cure, the secret to success, some tasty morsel that I could like sink my teeth into, that somebody knows something out there that I just haven't found yet. And maybe they'll share it with me there. So I go, and it's a different setting than the one. Miami was much more upscale. The funny thing about Miami was I did it for a week. I mean, I resisted the urge to go out. I mean, a lot of people, they fall off the wagon, they get in a cab, they go to the nearby mall. I lost 6 pounds there in a week. Hated every minute of it. Gained back the 6 pounds in 3 days going out to eat and just like making up for lost time. So I go to North Carolina, trying it. I'm like, I'm desperate. Like I'm going to do the program. And it's like, all right, you have to get everything approved by a nutritionist, and you're working with a doctor, and you're working with a trainer. I'm like, that's all great. I need to do all this stuff. And you go to a buffet line to eat, and it's like a cafeteria, and it's not like any cafeteria you've ever been to. It's like you hand them what your nutritionist approved for you to eat, and they put together a plate from the other side of the buffet, so you could look at all this stuff. Not that much of it looked good, but there's like maybe 50 choices behind there, and it's like you can get like a taste of 5 or 6 little bites of this stuff, and you're looking there like you're like starving. And it's like, it doesn't even look good. And it's like, they put together this plate that looks like something that you'd see like maybe at a high school cafeteria. And it's like, this is what we're supposed to eat, you know, then go back and have like an iced tea in like a plastic cup. It's like, what are we 16? So I did it for a week. I lost 5 pounds there. And I laughed because we stayed at a place, it's like the dormitory for, I don't know what it's like there now. This is, 12 years ago. But there'd be knocks in the door, like down the hall, like, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And people, you'd hear the knocks on the door. It'd be like Domino's or some pizza place.
Oh, no.
People fall off the wagon. It's just because it's so unrealistic. So I decided, all right, I mean, they had the internet back then. So I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be a better way. So I'm like, of course, obsessing about what I'm not eating. And I'm like, I'm in this place in North Carolina. So I go online, and just like I would when I go anywhere, like I love to travel, love to eat. I love to find new restaurants. We plan trips around a particular restaurant reservation. We did it growing up, and I do it to this day. So I'm like, if I was in this town, not on a diet at this place, what's there to eat here? Like, is there any place that I want to check out? So I go online and look, and there's an Italian restaurant that seemed pretty good. Like any Italian restaurant I would go to back home or any place else I'd want to check out. A Japanese sushi place that looked good. I enjoyed that. And a Brazilian steakhouse with the salad bar and all, slices of meat and whatever. And I'm like, all right. I said, let's make a deal here. I said, I'm going to do breakfast and lunch at the cafeteria this week. And I'm going to try each of these restaurants one night for dinner, sticking to my calorie budget, making reasonable choices, and allowing myself a glass of wine if I want it. I'd walk there. It's like a mile there. That'll be my exercise, and walk back. And so I went to the Italian restaurant. I told them what I was doing. I asked them, I said, please don't call and report me as like the escaped inmate from the place down the road. and everybody's laughing. Like I said, has this ever happened? They said, well, actually nobody's ever admitted it if they were here from the facility down the road. But everybody got a kick out of it, and the chef came out, and the owner, and then this is kind of what I did. And I got a lot of applause for it. And it's like I said, don't bring me the bread basket. Don't tell me about dessert. I want a glass of wine. Don't report me to them down there. It's like, so yeah, I was MIA at dinner time for that entire week. I did it at the Italian place, did it at the Japanese place, ordered some sashimi. I ordered a nice ginger salad, a miso soup, had a glass of wine or whatever, and did the same thing at the Brazilian place. And repeated it the next 4 nights, just kept to these places and made reasonable choices, engaged my servers, read the menu, figured out what I was going to have in advance. And lo and behold, I lost 5 pounds that week. I'm like, could be onto something. So I'm like, all right, I wasn't ready to like take the training wheels off yet and go home. But I decided, okay, I'm going to try this for another week and let's see what happens. Doing the exact same thing, breakfast and lunch at the place, and go to dinner, just keeping it to these 3 restaurants. I wasn't so sure of myself at this point, like I could do it. And you know, in a restaurant setting with real food and real people. And sure enough, I lost another 5 pounds the second week of trying it. So I'm like, okay, why am I spending all this money to be there? I think I figured it out. Now I can go home and we could put this into action. So that was really the basis of the restaurant diet. So I began to do this when I started back in November of 2009 at a lot of my favorite local restaurants. And I had to reintroduce myself to the people, the chefs, the waiters, waitresses, the owners. And I was one of their best customers at a lot of these places. I ate enough for 3 or 4 people myself. And I tipped based on that. So I was always afraid, like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm like this big pain in the neck. And like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, he's become cheap and, you know, he thinks he's going to lose weight. Yeah, sure. So I had to retrain these people and teach them like, okay, like I'm serious. I'm looking to get healthy and lose weight. So please help me, make them want to help you. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I talk about in my book about restaurant dieting out tips. So tell them what you're doing, plan in advance, make them want to help you. Don't be that pain in the neck customer. You know, I mean, yeah, it's okay to ask for everything, you know, things on the side and make reasonable modifications, but just do it in a nice, pleasant way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, be firm. I mean, when necessary, it's like, no, please don't tell me about the 12-layer chocolate cake. You know, when they continue to like oh, but it's
Right.
so delicious and the chocolate is from Germany or whatever. And it's like, no, I can't hear this.
If you could go back, do you think you could tell your childhood self that you're worth it? That, you know, I mean, do you think you could like somehow make yourself feel that worth that you now know you have, and that helps you to make these better choices?
Absolutely. I mean, and this is key. I mean, it's critical to raising healthy, productive kids is to give them that support, that nourishment, that nurturing, that love and that acceptance. I mean, life is going to throw curveballs and parents are going to go through tough times. I mean, well, it could be a job loss, it could be a divorce, it could be any number of things. But to be able to keep the kids out of it and talk to your kids if they're old enough, but not bring them in or make them feel in any way responsible. That child needs to be supported and nurtured and loved and really shown a healthy way of living and eating and told that they're okay, whatever they are. I mean, okay, they may not be the fastest kid on the track team. You did your best. I mean, that's what, okay, you got a 95 on the spelling bee. Okay, so you missed the question. It's like you did your best, like good for you. I mean, you know, even if, you know, we're not perfect. Okay, I come home with a D or an F on something. Okay, what went wrong? Let's work on this. You know, not you're a failure, you need to be punished. I mean, you're overweight or you screwed up on a test or your team lost the championship game or whatever in sports. It's like, okay, there's something to be learned. And sometimes you learn more from the challenges and when things don't go well or when you do make a mistake or you do quote unquote fail or maybe not come in first place than when everything's easy. And that's teaching kids that's life. I mean, that not everything's always going to go smoothly, but that they're okay, that what's going on outside of them isn't really who they are. And if they're unhappy or there are issues inside, that we need to deal with them as a family, that it's okay to talk, that it's safe to talk to us, that you should talk to us if there's something going on.
All right. I think that's really important for parents to understand. I think sometimes it is an emotional thing. And if a parent takes the time to explore all of these different possibilities and they can't find anything, then the next step would definitely be to see a doctor and find out if there's something physical going on. And like you did, get a therapist, because basically, you're saying that you realize that most of your weight problem was your lack of love for yourself, or just the suffering that you were going through and not being able to kind of pull yourself out of that. But now having a therapist and going through all of this and finding that balance and finding how to take care of yourself and give yourself that love, you've been able to sustain this, and other people can as well.
Exactly. That's really the message, is that if I could do it, anyone can do it. And that underneath every overweight or unhappy or addicted person, there is someone who really needs to be taken by the hand, nurtured, loved, and shown that there's a better way. And that it really starts by looking inside, peeling back those layers. I liken it to peeling an onion. The layers of fat or whatever it is, the addictions, they start to melt off, melt away, and they subside, and they leave behind a likable person, a decent, lovable person who now has an opportunity to go out and do and be things that they never before dreamed could be possible, and share this with the world. There's so much negativity and nonsense out there that the more positivity and self-affirming choices that we could make, the better.
Where can people get in touch with you at?
Find me on my website, my name is Fred Balaci, FredBolaci, Enterprises, FredBolaciEnterprises.com. I'm available on Facebook, Fred Balaci Enterprises, Instagram, Fred Balaci Enterprises, as well as Twitter. I do private coaching as well as motivational speaking, and have several slots open for new coaching clients going into the holidays. Could be a great holiday gift for yourself or someone you love. Get into New Year, New You, 2020, new decade, New Year's resolution, and let me help you take you to the next level. It's way more than simply losing weight. That I could help you get to discover a whole new life, a whole new you that you never dreamed possible. I've actually been blessed to help hundreds of people lose thousands of pounds over the past 6 years since starting my company, and hope to continue to do a lot more. Best way that I could keep what I've got is to share it and to pay it forward. And that's really my mission. That's why I'm here doing this.
Awesome. I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much as well. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Please rate and review so other people can learn about this podcast. Find out more about sleep, hygiene, eating healthy, tasty recipes, zero-waste lifestyle, and lots more on ThatOrganicMom.com. Help us spread the word. Be blessed and stay healthy.